you are reinventing yourself and doing what you need to do.
Yes.
Okay, everybody, I'm getting it started to go live. And it should be starting now. Let's check. Yep. Okay. And we are live.
Would you like to do an opening? Would you like to give an opening statement before I start?
You could just get right into it if you would like.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. My name is Lissa Jones, and I am honored to serve as the moderator for this panel. I am so excited to learn about what these young women have to say and to join their movements. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to protect Black women. We're going to be talking with Black women. Finally, someone's asking us the question about how to protect us. I think that is marvelous, and I'm delighted to be a part of it. So if I could, I'd like to go ahead and ask each of our panelists if they wouldn't mind introducing themselves. And I'll just do so, if you don't mind, by the way you are arranged on my screen. Is this okay? Okay. Let me first say, welcome, beauties. You all look fabulous, and you're making me feel like this is the best Monday night I've had in a long time. So thank you for having me tonight. All right, let's see. Dre, is it Dre Demry? Dre Demry, looking beautiful with your fabulous glasses. Welcome to Black Women.
Hi.
Hi. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your work, if you don't mind.
Of course, of course. My name is Dre. I am a hairstylist. I own a salon suite in Uptown Minneapolis, where I host space specifically and exclusively for Black femmes. So yeah, that's me.
Well, that's a lot in a little short sentence. Beautiful. Welcome, Dre. Thank you so much. And Anika, welcome. Will you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I like to call myself North Star raised, born and raised in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, particularly in Minnesota, historic Rondo neighborhood. And I have the honor to serve currently as the vice president for the Minneapolis NAACP. It's actually one of the few, if not the only, Minneapolis, or excuse me, NAACP chapters that is fully ran by Black women, young Black women in particular. So I am just ecstatic about this opportunity, like you have mentioned, for us to speak in our Black womanhood and talking about what does safety looks like and what does just like how we are showing up for ourselves and protecting ourselves in the midst of making sure we are protecting our communities as well.
I'm so glad you're here. Welcome, Anika. And is it Zede? Did I pronounce it correctly? Please help me.
Zede.
Zede. Oh, it's even more beautiful than I imagined. Zede, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. Please tell us about yourself, Zede.
Yes, so my name is Zede. I was born in Minneapolis, North Minneapolis. I currently live up on a farm helping my mother raise her livestock and start her co-op. She's the first Black-led nationwide co-op in the United States, so I'm supporting her with that. And yeah, I'm the owner of Holistic Heaux. I hold space for Black mothers, Black caregivers, and my trans Black sisters. Thank you.
I mean, this is amazing. It's like the planet is exploding with goodness. Is it Atlese? Please tell me.
Atlese, you had it right.
I'm delighted you're here. Welcome. Support Black women. I love your t-shirt. Hi, Atlese.
This is all thanks to Ricky and Zania, who run Tangible Thoughts, the open mic space and creative space. So shout out to them for the shirt. My name is Atlese Robinson. I am the founding artistic director of Ambiance Theater Company. I'm also an artist who holds many different hats. And I'm really happy to be here because all of the work that I do as an artist, is centered around about healing for Black people and the uplifting of Black stories and Black voice. And so I'm honored to be on this panel with everyone in this space. So thank you, Abriana, for reaching out to me and making this connection happen.
I'm so glad you're here. Thank you, Atlese. You know, I'm a student of history, and I can see different ancestors of our women in each of you. This is wonderful. And Abriana, you are the founder and the visionary for this event. Would you like to say a few words and introduce yourself in Black Women Speak?
So hello, I'm Abriana. I'm the founder and director of Black Women Speak, which I started last year, and kind of mirroring this event, Protect Black Women. The whole reason why Black Women Speak exists is to protect Black women, uplift Black women, and make sure that we're healing and that we have time for ourselves. We have regular programming called Black Women Heal, which is held online and in person. We also have Black Mamas Breathe, which is a mother's group that's held once a month on the fourth Sunday, where we have activated childcare with Kenna Cotman. And so we just do a lot of different events like this, discussions and everything just centering Black women in our joy. And yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited that all of you have agreed to be a part of this event, and I'm excited to hear your voices. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your vision, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. We'll just jump right into your brilliance. And if you wouldn't mind, just to make it easiest for this lady who's lived 52 years and perhaps Zoom is still a bit new, would you mind just putting your hand up so I can call on you so that we don't cross each other up in talking? What does protection look like and feel like? Dre, was that you, or are you just doing your computer?
I'm trying. I'm ready though. Yes, I would like to answer this.
You take it
away. Can you hear me okay? I just turned on my heater. So, okay, good. What is protection? When I think about protection, it really closely relates to freedom, and just being able to navigate any space freely without fear, or anything else that could be a challenge to you. That's pretty much my definition and how I move in making sure that I feel protected, is that if I feel free and I can do what I want to do in any space, then I feel protected.
Excellent. I'm glad you set the tone. Thank you. And anybody else? What does protection look like? What does it feel like to you? Anika.
Hey, yeah, when I just resonate and reflect on this question, I think about, protection. Usually people learn about something once they either have had it taken away from them or have had it threatened, right? So, those who are seeking protection, or those who are asking for protection, are demanding protection or protecting themselves, usually come from a traumatic situation to where we have lived in absence. And for, as a Black woman who has lineage to ancestry that has survived slavery, right? Who have overcame and fled slavery and have passed down those stories and those narratives, and like that harm and that fear or that trauma still lives in our body today, right? So the sense of protection that Black women need is a totally heightened type of protection, and spiritual and more in-depth type of protection that we will just assume from folks who have not had to ever live in a place of either fear or dehumanization, right? So when I think about the protection that Black women need, one, Black women need to just be believed, listened to. Black women, I think protection comes with hearing from folks, do you need anything? How can I help you? And even for many of us who are accustomed to just doing it ourselves, someone that could just, sit us down with grace and love and like, I got you, I got this, and not asking Black women to produce more or show more or perform more, or that we have to be 10 times as good as someone else to just be accredited our worth, right? Or be recognized. And these aren't things to just say, like, just because any Black woman should just, be glorified, but why not? Why not any Black woman be glorified, be affirmed, be loved, and being cared for? And I think one of the biggest things too, with the Minneapolis NAACP, with President Leslie, she mentions the 3 C's: communication, collaboration, and the last one, compassion. I think, protection looks like having more compassion for Black women, in that we have been reacting in many ways, particularly for Black women in leadership, in overly protective ways than other folks have had. And yet we need to find more space for forgiveness, that Black women are not perfect and nobody is perfect. But yet, for Black women who make mistakes, who stumble, who are just going through life just like everybody else without a real blueprint, we should give compassion and forgiveness, to many Black women who are, responding to all of the things that this world is throwing at us.
You are doing a beautiful job, and you have said, I'm taking notes. So anytime I look down, please know that is not disinterest, but interest. I am making notes on what each of you are saying, so I can try to get hip and to try to facilitate well. Anika, well said and well done. Dre, beautiful job. Thank you. We're going to circle back this idea of forgiveness, and forgiving each other, forgiving ourselves is a big deal. Okay, Zede, Atlese, Abriana, do you have some ideas about what does protection look like, and what does it feel like if somebody wants to protect us? Zede.
I'll go after Atlese. I saw that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Atlese. Excuse me.
I appreciate you.
Excuse me.
You're fine. I really want to echo something that Anika mentioned about like the spiritual aspect of protection, because I feel like when I have the space to continue to keep myself grounded and to connect to creator power, my intuition protects me on the daily. There are many situations that I've been in where I know something dangerous might have happened to me, and my intuition will be like, you gotta go. And I don't question that. And I think that's something that's extremely important, is remembering how much protection that our ancestors have given us spiritually, and that doesn't leave us, that we still have that ability to navigate through the world with that wisdom that is eons older than the life that we've lived in this body. And so for me, a lot of protection does have to do with, speaking to my fallen, being able to pray to God, being able to stay grounded in that, so that I know, when the inevitable happens, that we do live in a dangerous world, I know how to move and shake and get out the way. It also looks like, another thing that Anika mentioned is just seeing each other, believing in each other. Sisterhood is a safe space for me. I love being around Black women who make me feel like the work that I do is important, who encourage me. I actually held my first rehearsal with some young women at Augsburg, and they're women of color, and 2 of them are young Black women. And that space reminded me why I do the work that I do. And it's a really beautiful thing to be able to see each other in that way and to uplift each other in that way. So protection looks like a lot of that compassionate love, like Anika said, but also like really being in tune with your intuition, because we always have some signs, some nerve that will let us know when something isn't what it should be, or isn't right for us. And trusting that and staying grounded in that is really important. And I think that's the most critical way that I keep myself safe.
It's a wonderful thing that the ancestors have given you a gift to listen, because sometimes our drums are beating, but we don't hear, And so it's wonderful that you hear and heed. So thank you, Atlese. And Zede, would you please share with us your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, protection, I just feel like the word comfort keeps coming up to me, like feeling comfortable enough to, I guess, move the way that, my intuition tells me to. A lot of the time when I feel like Black women are in a state of like fear or horror, our intuition can be skewed when we don't know like how to listen to all the voices, right? So when I feel comfortable, I am more able to listen to what my guides are telling me, more able to feel what I'm feeling, you know, feel all the vibrations in my body. So like what keeps coming up is just comfort. Like protection to me is comfort. Like, does this environment make me feel comfortable? Does this person make me feel comfortable? Does this situation make me feel comfortable? And, you know, like for me, a lot of the time it's no. But how do I move after that if I'm feeling uncomfortable? Do I move around? Can I move around? Do I have the access to move around? You know, like a lot of the time for us, we don't feel comfortable in our work environments, but do we have that privilege or resource to move around in our work environments? You know, like that is what I feel like, you know, a lot of us can relate to, is like, we don't feel comfortable. We don't have no choice. So how can we move around with it? So I think that's what keeps coming to me, is comfort.
I thank you very much. I love all the affirmation. I hope you all can see yourselves affirming each other, because you're giving each other exactly what we're asking for tonight. This is fantastic. Abriana, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, just quickly. For me, I think I'm still trying to discover what protection looks like and feels like, because I don't think that my experience as a Black woman, do I feel protected often? I don't. So I don't really know what it feels like. I think that I can imagine that it feels like I don't have to watch my back all the time, is how I would say protection is.
Thank you. You know, I think that's a profound idea, that many times when we're talking about equity for Black women, when we're talking about justice for Black women, it's something we don't know. So we actually have to imagine it, which is really sad, actually. But thank goodness we can imagine it, I guess. Okay. What can people do to actively protect Black women? Do you have an idea or two to share with people about what they can do about it?
I think one of the big things, at least for myself, is not expecting so much emotional labor from us. I find like we are mothering grown ass people. I will apologize. I do cuss a lot. So if that's something that you're like, no, don't do that, where it's TV, like let me know. I apologize. But that's how I feel. Cause like I don't even have kids yet. And it's like sometimes I feel like I'm really mothering grown people. And I'm like, it's okay to mother. I think there's something beautiful about being a nurturer, and something beautiful about being someone who can hold space for people. But when someone is taking more than they're giving, that's not healthy, because any good relationship has reciprocity. And so I really feel like one of the big things is just like not requiring a Black woman to save the day all the time, especially when you put yourself in that mess.
Wisdom from the ages. I mean, honestly, they tear it all the way up, tear it all the way down, put it on fire, stomp it out, and then call us. Honestly, I completely agree. How about anybody else? A thought to share, or would you like to move to the next question? Please, Dre, thank you.
I think that it ultimately requires centering us. There are very few spaces where we are not the afterthought. And I truly believe that the only spaces that I feel safe in is when a lot of intention has been centering us. So what can you do? I can never give specifics, because there's a spectrum of Black femininity. Like, it's just a whole spectrum. So there won't be any guide of how to make sure this specific Black women centered. But just in trying to be intentional about making sure that they are the focus, or we are the focus, is a start for sure.
Hey, I think I'll go then. I love us. I was thinking about, like, even the first question, I was thinking like we have developed, I don't know, through ancestry, through our DNA, this like self-preservation mechanism to where like even thinking about protection, like what I'm hearing and even how I'm trying to navigate what that looks like, right, has been more like internally, like what does internal protection looks like, protect ourselves from the inside, but yet like how can we, what does that look like for outside forces, you know, positive ones to help us get to a place of protection. And I think, you know, organically, really communication, right? I think communication in a sense of ask like check-ins, you know, having systems of like checking in of how someone's feeling, and it's not just like always a good, you know, or you just like on autopilot with your emotions and how you're performing, but like to help and support Black women to not be so rooted in the performative style of showing up. And I think that's really hard, especially for Black women in leadership, because you know, leadership is something like it takes a skill, right? And it takes breaking down of barriers, all the things and stereotypes about Black women on why they can't lead because of X, Y, and Z. So I think also too, like I mentioned before, believe, trust Black women, ask Black women, and like really like don't ask to criticize or for us to continue arguing our points, our opinions, because like I feel like Black women definitely have this like wisdom and intelligence about ourselves that is just so many people we have seen exploit it and utilize it to their gain. So I think, you know, just like how we should be treating the earth is how we should be treating Black women, who has been, you know, the cradle of civilization for nations, right? If we want to get to a historic, you know, aspect. Also too, like on a spiritual note, like pray for Black women, like disrupt and create spaces within, you know, those sisterhoods or those times where we're praying for each other, and that we may not have always the answers, but someone is offering their skills. And something, you know, I guess tangible that was helpful for me, especially my experience last year when I ran for office for St. Paul City. Many people thought, you know, many people did not take me seriously. Many people did not take the campaign seriously. Many people thought I should have waited my term. Many people thought you're very young, or you're too attractive, or you're too, you know, whatever, you know, I'm not boring enough to be in politics, right? And what made me feel protected and even supported by folks who even weren't even really Black folks were people who had offered a skill set and offered just like knowledge, you know, like bridging that knowledge around stuff that I never even thought I needed or didn't know about, just because there wasn't an investment, you know, in Black girls.
Thank you. Zede.
So when I was a child, I attended this school after daycare. It was called Imhotep Science Academy. And it was basically a school after school program thing ran by Black parents in the North Side area, teaching the community about what does it look like to have unity within our community as Black people. And one thing that a really respected elder, Brother Nura, said was that to protect a Black woman, find a sisterhood to support. Now, don't join the sisterhood, but find a sisterhood, like find a group of Black women, Black trans women, right? Find a group to support and to make sure you check in and to make sure you give them the resources that you had that you think or that you assume they may not have access to. Now that may be putting a good word in for them to have a good income, or I'm sorry, to have a good job, you know, helping them out if they need moving, things like so little or so big, whatever resources or privilege or I guess upper hand that you have, find a group of women, Black women that you take care and tend to. So like this kind of is similar to what Dre said, where you're centering Black women or centering our Black trans sisters, where you're just making sure you find a group that you're consistently supporting, consistently checking on, and making that like an everyday consistent thing in your life. Or even just simply have a Black woman's Cash App that you send to every day or every week. Things like that to me is like, make sure you have it in your schedule, or I guess in your to-do list, to check in on a Black woman or a Black group of women, sisterhood, whatever it may be. So that, I think, to me, looks like how someone can actively protect Black women every day.
You know, you are all much younger than I am, but it's wonderful to see my friends, Brother Anura and Sister Raquette Siasar, coming forward, and our young people. That is wonderful. Imhotep Science Academy, here, here. Yes, indeed. I should have known. Great roots. What a wonderful, wonderful thing to know. Thank you. Thank you, Zede. And all right, let's talk about this. What is safety? When we had our pre-conversation, our preparatory call, we talked about the idea that Breonna Taylor was killed in her own house when she was asleep. And even the person, I should say, who was indicted for killing or for endangering white lives, not her life, and not the life of any Black people who lived around her. And so it's really difficult to figure out how we can create safety in our own bodies, how we can create safety for our people, and where and how we can be safe. And I'd be very interested to know what your thoughts are about any or all of that. And who would like to start? It's also wonderful to see the babies today. It reminds me that hope endures and our people will continue. Now, I know there's not a shy Black woman on this call, so tell me something. So tell me, unmute yourself and tell me something. I don't have control of this call. Quit playing with me. Zede, you're on mute. You are on mute, my love. Can you please? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I had to make sure my baby was quiet. But to me, what is safety? Man, like, I feel like this is a heavy question, because, you know, the Breonna Taylor case is something that is an unfortunate story that continues to happen, and that has happened, you know, drastically in our lineage. So like, what is safety? I don't know, because, you know, the rare times I felt it as a child were when I was home, my father, my mother, and my sisters were home, and we were all home. Anytime outside of that, I never really felt safety. So it's hard for me to answer that, you know, thinking about, and, you know, me being a mother myself, I am starting to recognize how it looks to protect myself and then to protect my daughter, who will be a Black woman in this world, who will have her own thoughts, who will have her own opinions, and won't be by me all the time. So I'm learning every day how I can envision safety for me, for her, and for all the, you know, the Black babies that are in this nation. So yeah, I don't know. As right now, I don't know, but I will leave it to someone else to answer.
I think that's very wise that we don't necessarily know. But I think for Black people, particularly, our center on home, the debilitation of the family structure as the primary means of social control was how enslavement worked on our people. And so home has a unique place for us. We were kidnapped from our home and we're given a different home, and then we're moved around all the way. And every time we have to readjust, and we have to help our people recenter. And I think that that is a very important thing to call out, is how we can feel safe at home. And sadly, we know in this pandemic, and we know beforehand, that not everybody's safe at home, but I hear you, Zede. I hear you. Okay, powerful Black women, quit playing with me. Unmute, please. You want me to call some sisters' names, or what you call it, gonna do?
I feel really similar to Zede. I don't know if there's like a specific, I don't even know if I'm looking for an answer, because I think about the fact that, again, like I said earlier, the world is dangerous anyway, you know, and then when you have all these added layers to your identity on it, there's like oppression that's attached to who you are, there's really no space that is safe. I think that what safety can feel like, in a sense, is being around people who do listen, who do, show you compassion, people who are patient with you, people who can forgive you. You can feel safe. I feel safe in my body when I'm connected to it, when I'm not neglecting it, when I'm actually paying attention to what it needs and the amount of work that it does for me. But it ain't like it's not like a real like, okay, I feel safe. Like even in my home, something I even mentioned before in our pre-conversation, like even in my home, like, yeah, I feel safe around my family, of course. But people be shooting over here, like, and bullets go through people's houses all the time, and so it's like there's never really a space where I'm like, I can let my guard down completely. There always has to be some level of like hyper awareness just in case that I feel. So I don't really know how to define what that would be and what that would look like.
I think, that's really profound when you think about how we transfer our DNA unconsciously. Resmaa Menakem talks about this a lot, the way that his grandmother's hands has influenced the way he feels in his own body, about his own safety and about white body supremacy. And if you think as Black women, with Zede just having a baby 8 months ago, whatever it is we're feeling and thinking and knowing at that time in our DNA is transferred to our babies. So if we don't have a sense of safety, the minute baby comes into the world, he or she also has no sense of safety. And that's wrong, that the world robs Black women of a sense of safety, Black women in the broadest definitions of Black women. I just, thank you. Thank you. I'm taking mad notes. Anika, thank you.
I agree with everyone who has spoke around just like not knowing what feels safe. And I don't think it's really just like, well, it is not knowing, but I think like the word safety in itself, like like the creation and like who defines safety, and we think about in our government, public safety, is a department that has law enforcement that's supposed to protect and serve, and we don't see that impact, on us. So although, yes, there's a definition of safety, like that definition wasn't designed for us to feel safe. So I think like there's this recreation of like what is safe for Black women, for Black people, for people who have been exploited, dehumanized, enslaved, oppressed, genocide. That's a totally different type of safety. I think that's more like we're like, what makes us feel human? What makes us feel human and protected as human beings. And I was just going to just share briefly too. I think about like there's like especially someone who have like been very aware of like trauma responses, right? And aware of how has Black women coped with not feeling safe and what we have had to adapt to feel safe, whether it's our hair, how we dress, the group of people we talk to, the how we raise our children, how we are in relationships and intimate relationships or not in intimate relationships with people, and just like all those things are response to us being safe. And I like how you mentioned, Resmaa, because he talks about like just real trauma as a response of either too much has happened to you, too little, or like too soon. And all those things, far as like safety, I kind of feel like is a space of just being, where like Black women can just be their natural, authentic selves in any space. And like that is accepted and that is loved and that's embraced and that's protected and that's, celebrated as well.
I love how you're teaching when you're talking, and I see you, Dre, when you're talking about Resmaa, too little, too much, or too soon. Think about the adultification of Black girls. That by the time we're 5 years old, they're already assigning us all kind of Jezebel and sexual hypermiss and everything. We're 5 years old. We don't know anything about sex. We don't know anything about Jezebel. We haven't even heard of Jez. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden we're adultified in such a way, as I see it with my own granddaughter. She's 11, but she looks like she's much older. And I'm watching people, and I mean, I'm calling people out like, oh, I see you, dude. Don't be looking, you know what I mean? Can you, I mean, she's 11. And I'm like, you can't see she's 11? You know, Anika, I'm glad you brought that up. Too little, too much, too soon. Dre.
I think it's interesting that we had a little struggle to figure out what safety is. And it made me think about how I'm pretty sure we've all been the person to provide safety for someone very often, but it's really hard to kind of describe what it will feel like because we're very rarely in that position to receive safety. I think during Corona, I have really tried to figure out and explore what safety is for me. At the top of Corona, my mother and my grandmother moved away out of town. And that's kind of like my cord right there. And I felt really unsafe. And then on top of that, we are in a pandemic. And then we started to deal with everything from the trauma of George Floyd being murdered. And I just kind of felt really, really unsafe. I started to tap into my spirituality, and that's where I found what safety was for me at the moment. It's kind of sad that I kind of gave up feeling protected from any other outside sources, and now have kind of depended on me knowing that I got my ancestors to protect me, and that safety for me. Also kind of creating an idea of when safety is not assigned to me or given to me and the worst case scenario happens, I think we all think about death. And I have been really, really, really dreading on death lately. And it's more so in the name of like, it's not the end. That might be the safety part for us. That might just be where like returning to your maker might be where safety initially and finally become. So just a couple of ideas about safety for me and what I've been through and kind of how I'm trying to play with it, or yeah, that's it.
You know, Zede, I mean, Dre, I want to reflect on something. Zede was looking at her baby, and I'm thinking about what you're just saying, Dre, about the idea that maybe our only safety is in death. I mean, just think about what the world has done to Black women, that are perhaps our only safety is in death. And I'm sorry that I don't have a different reference for women. Well, Lucille Clifton won, you know, that I didn't have any kind of role model. And yet here I am, every day something threatens to kill me. But I also think of the podcast I did with Danez Smith, An Alternate Heaven for Black Boys, where he's talking about Black girls on stoops, you know, braiding hair and jumping double dutch, that the only place where we have a safe place is in the afterlife. I almost don't have words. I don't have words. So, talking about unlearning indoctrinated respectability politics. First, if you would, can you define what respectability politics looks like to you? We talked about it in terms of unlearning indoctrinated respectability politics aligned with whiteness and sort of its others, and how we can actually be in community with Black women, which I think, as a 52-year-old Black woman, I think it takes some degree of self-confidence in order to be present really whole with Black women. Because if you're downing yourself and you're not sure of yourself, I can give you all of myself. I'm not perfect, but I'm doing my best, and I love you purely. That's all I can do. And if I make a mistake, I promise you I'll say I'm sorry, and I'm not here to hurt you. But I think that that's a profound question. How can we show up with Black women, and how do we unlearn respectability politics and its assignment to whiteness? Abriana, I saw you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, before I comment on that, I just wanted to comment on safety. And as a Black woman, I feel like we have to create safety for ourselves. And so for me, like within interpersonal relationships, boundaries is something that provides safety for us. Like when we go out into the world, then how do we protect ourselves? Like learning self-defense, whether it's shooting a gun, whether it's carrying a knife, mace, whatever it is. I think that is a part of what we need to do. And especially with these random acts of violence, like it's necessary for us to know how to do these things. Like you don't have to carry it around with you all the time, but we should at least know how to use these things. I think about like even growing our food and knowing how to, you know, sew our own clothes. I feel like all these things are a part of safety when there's attacks on us in these kind of ways. So that's just what I want to say about safety.
I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier, Adriana. Forgive me. So I will tell you, as an older Black woman, I hope you guys will learn how to do everything you need to do to stay safe, because girl, I worry. Okay, if I have a gun, I mean, probably I'll be the one to get shot, honest God. If I have mace, probably be me on the ground. I'm just trying to hear, you know, can I hear somebody coming up on me? You know, I'm telling you, when you get old, it's cruel. You can't listen to your AirPods. I mean, there's all kind of stuff. I'm looking at everybody. I'm watching everybody. So I'm hopeful when you learn, you will teach me. All right, let's talk about this idea of divesting ourselves of what we've learned about respectability politics and its attachment to whiteness. Would somebody like Anika, go ahead, please. You're shaking your head. You know it.
I'm just thinking about this because I feel like my experience, especially being a Black woman, is like finding a way to balance my truth when especially in spaces of quote unquote professional spaces, and, you know, and with the Minneapolis NAACP, the NAACP in itself, you know, is an entity that balances that relationship with government and civil rights, right? And I think about Ida B. Wells and how she was like, hey, deuces, y'all too respectable around here. We got folks who's getting lynched and we wasting time. And I think even in this day, it's still like, I think of the spirit of Ida B. Wells, to where she used her pen to tell the truth, right? And she used her pen to share, like, you know, the folks who was getting, lynched, who was getting killed, who was murdered, who was getting violated. You know, these were our anchors, right? Our pillars in the community that was offering a sense of sustainability, you know, for a community that was like totally always like at its core development trying to undermine, you know, our leadership and our sense to take care of ourselves. I think about also too, this is something, you know, as a Black woman who like had to really like be authentic with how I'm showing up in these conversations. I, you know, had to share, like, we need to stop doing this reimagining justice or reimagining public safety. And I only say that only because I've been in countless rooms with justice or law enforcement leaders who are totally comfortable with us re-envisioning a new system that innately was built and created to harm and police Black and brown bodies, right? And like, we need to get to a place to where it's like, no, we're not going to reinvent a more palatable term for a system that innately is still continuously to harm Black and brown bodies and Black women, right? So I think that is the courage and that's the boldness that Black women is showing right now. And I think, you know, we need to also support Black women with taking those courageous acts and steps and like voicing what hasn't been said because of the fear of just being safe, right? Not everyone's able to take those risks. And we have to also have compassion and understanding and love for for people in our community who are not able to take those risks. But still, like, that means we need to pour even more into, you know, our folks who are in all different type of aspects and all in type of spaces where they are pushing the envelope and that they're speaking on, you know, making sure that we are protecting Black women, not only, you know, in our sisterhood, but the deconstruction of procedures, our values, our practices, are just the status quo that has existed in spaces that has not served us.
Get it. Renaming oppression doesn't make it less oppressive. And why do they always want to rename something? I swear, they try to make it seem like, I mean, honestly, the renaming makes it something different. I mean, that's double talking. I can't stand double talking. We have a question in the chat. Well, she's posturing something. I like it. She says, people, even other Black women, have been using tone policing to make Black women unsafe. Would anybody like to pick that up? Oh, okay. I see Zede. Oh, I'm sorry, Atlese. Thank you. Oh, and Zede?
Well, I guess I'll try to talk about both at the same time. I feel like when it comes to respectability, we have to remember that that's just anti-Blackness. Like, that's all it really is. It's the idea that in order to be respected, you have to somehow be close to the white line. And I think that's something that people just have to let go of. Like, and that happens in colorism, that happens in like, where you from? Are you too hood? Are you too weird or whatever you want to call it? Like, are you too much of a nerd? Like, really actually allowing people to just be who they are naturally is a beautiful thing. Like, minding your business is one of the greatest things you could do in life. I think that's a really strong and powerful way to show love for people, is letting people just be who they are, because we're not supposed to be identical. Like, that's the beauty of it. I think the other thing is like, actually, like, you mentioned history earlier, but like really digging deep in our history, because some of the things that, a lot of our history, a lot of our culture has been co-opted by white people. So it's a lot of things that people will look at and be like, oh, that's strange, or that's weird, or that's not cool, or whatever it might be. But it really actually came from us, and it was used and turned and twisted around. And now they tried to make it into something that was completely unrelated to what it was intended for. So I think people really, like, when it comes to that conversation, I think that's an intra-community conversation too, like between Black people, period. Like, we have to really walk away from thinking that whiteness is the standard. Like, white people are literally the minority in the world. Like, when we look at the globe, most people are Black or brown. Most people are not white. And so it's really important to remember that, like, we already are the standard. Like, when you can get that in your head and understand that, like, when I'm not trying to look like a white woman, I'm not trying to be like a white woman, then it's like, okay, all of that can go away and I can just see my sister because I see myself.
It's freedom. I don't ever want to be white. If I woke up white, I would be shocked and probably have a heart attack. I mean, honest to God. I have no desire whatsoever, never have, never would, never want to. And I mean, it's freedom. I really don't mind. And I think they kind of know it, because when I walk in the room, they get a certain kind of attitude, So I dig it anyway. Teach at least. I love it. Dre, were you going to say something? Who did I miss? Zede. Thank you. Thank you. My memory is not as good as it used to be.
Can you hear me? So everything Atlese said is what I was gonna say. Just like how respectability politics is just pure anti-Blackness. Like, anything that our people try and say, oh, don't do that. That's too white. That's too ghetto. All of that is just anti-Black. There's no there's no gray area about that. I moved from North Minneapolis when I was about 8 or 9 years old and moved to the suburbs. So respectability politics was something that was always brought up to me going to suburban schools. I was in Burnsville, Apple Valley area, majority white people, pro-police area. I was absolutely the most minority person in that whole entire city. And, I dressed the way that I dressed because it was the way I could express myself. So, even my own father was at fault for trying to assimilate to whiteness, telling me, oh, you shouldn't wear that. That's too ghetto. Oh, you shouldn't wear, things like that. Growing up, having the principal, teachers look at me different because, I'm a little Black girl. Some areas got more curves than others, right? Like, so I was always told growing up, like, this is like, it was just something, a tone or a language around assimilating to whiteness. So I got beef with respectability politics because for me, it's like, it's always been a way to restrict me and restrict my creativity. So I guess the best thing for me that I'm going to teach my daughter, because as I grow, I see what not to do as a mother for my daughter. And I want her to know that, you know, creating your own type of style and having your own thoughts is one of like the most liberated things that she can do, and I will always support her in whatever she wants to do. Nothing that she's going to do is going to take away her Blackness and her history. She's half Ethiopian, you know, so like I want her to really understand that her Blackness is her Blackness is her Blackness, and there's nothing respectable that has to be about that. So just piggybacking off what y'all said.
In fact, being Black is respectable in and of itself. I mean, that's the thing. That's the gig. I mean, they made up the lie. Let them keep it. You know what I mean? I totally dig it. I totally dig it. Dre?
Yeah, I'm just gonna piggyback a little bit more and just kind of say that we're really sacred beings, and that to me means it has history. It's old. It's ancient, and it's powerful. And anything that comes up naturally, whether it be how you want to dress or how whatever it is, the choice that your spirit is kind of guided to, that is what is most powerful for you. So when I think about respectability politics, it's anything that goes against your natural desire to do and be whoever you want to do or be. I also think it's interesting. I see a lot of it, and I try to do a lot of beating it out of people in the salon, because there are a lot of people who come in and they want to get these cool braiding styles, but they have to go to work in next week or so. And I'm always battling like, yeah, I understand that you want to get paid and we have to live our lives, and that's how we feel secure and grounded. But that's still not feeding to your spirit. That's still not feeding to who you are and who you want to be. Even as something as simple as waking up and using the same kind of jam for your toast. That could be something that someone has indoctrinated in you for so long, and now you realize that you hate jelly jam. You actually really, really like strawberry. It's a process of unlearning and relearning yourself. The unlearning process is hard, but the relearning process is so beautiful. I literally probably evolve into a new being every week, or probably every day. Every time I wake up, even my hairstyles are different. My style is different. Like, I enjoy evolving into a different part of myself, because I know I've unlearned something just to relearn something new about myself. And that aligns me with what my power is.
I just have to say, you're like a living testimony on this Zoom. Girl, you are fly flavor in every way. Your background slays, and it's not virtual. I mean, girl, you are living your best life. I love how you're talking about that. That feels like freedom. Thank you for that dose. I needed it. I had a bad experience today. I trained a group of people that gave me the highest ratings they've ever had in their trainings, and the most people who have ever attended their training. And the man who's the president wrote me and said he's a Christian conservative, and he hopes I don't believe in 1619, and he hopes I don't believe in Black women's liberation, and he hopes my ideas don't come through in my training. And girl, I was through. I mean, I have a headache so so deep, I can barely breathe. So seeing all of you and seeing the participants, the number of 29 people on this call, makes me extremely happy. And I want to say thank you for the liberation it brings. When you think about the ways that whiteness has tried to constrict Black women, and we talk about this whole idea of confidently navigating spaces. White supremacy is set up such that if you're not white, it makes sure that it never communicates, particularly in Minnesota. They never say it out loud. But there's sort of this thing when you walk in the room that you recognize, like, I'm not supposed to be here. Like when Black Lives Matter moved through all the brunches out in the suburbs, you dig? And all of a sudden it was like, oh no, Black people are taking space at Lord Fletcher's in Lake Minnetonka. We are not safe, okay? So let's talk about this whole idea of confidently navigating spaces, even in a time and context when Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris qualifies, they're called a monster by the President of the United States. They're put on the cover of the New York Times having guns and looking like some kind of America's vision for a terrorist. So let's talk about that. How do we confidently navigate spaces in this environment?
I want to first acknowledge that nothing a white person believes, feels, or says about me has anything to do with me, period. When I was born, my mama named me Atlese Robinson. That was the end of it. Like, that's just it. I don't, I feel like I'm at the place in my life where I know that who I am is changing and evolving, like Dre said. But at the end of the day, that's my business. Can't nobody tell me who I am and how to be. That's ridiculous. I don't care what you are, what you look like. Like, I have to live my life. Also, I wouldn't take anything that Donald Trump says to the heart anyway, because that man's a liar and he don't make no sense. And so I just he don't get room to determine anything over here. So like that's really all I got to say on that one. Like, you gotta go.
You have said it all. You have said it all, at least. That is good. I'm tickled pink. Everybody's nodding. Who wants to speak?
Do you mind repeating the question again? Sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. How do we confidently navigate spaces, given the time, the construct, the degree of oppression we experience, the unspoken ideas of white supremacy that say we're not welcome in certain spaces? How do we navigate those spaces confidently?
So I was watching an interview on Girl Trek with Angela Davis and Nikki Giovanni. And Nikki Giovanni said, you know, we got to stop looking to people who hate us, you know, for opinions about us. You know, they think we're ugly. They hate us. They're not going to say anything good about us. So we got to stop looking for validation in that. And I think just to talk about again, like our respectability politics, like Black people got to stop trying to police each other, and stop trying to put that white supremacist ideologies on each other, you know, unlearning that type of stuff so we can move confidently in the world. Because I only get validation from other Black women, and I only feel a kind of way when I'm not so much that I'm not validated by a Black woman, but I would rather have, you know, the approval of a Black woman over anybody else. So I think that we definitely have to stop policing each other and putting these respectability politics on each other, and stop looking to the white gaze for any type of validation.
I'm always amazed. I see you, Anika. I'm always amazed at how the ancestors work, because I was just going to bring up Toni Morrison and the white gaze. We are groomed in a white supremacist society. It's groomed to tell us this land is your land, this land is my land, when it's not. It's groomed to tell us that white people are supreme in every way. Look at the state of the world. That cannot be true. And its ideas are designed around white body supremacy. And it's something we really actually have to consciously reject in order to show up in spaces confidently. And it's something we have to do on a regular basis. Take searching and fearless moral inventory. Is the white man talking to me in my head? Or is it me talking to me? Or my ancestors talking to me? Or my mother talking to me? Who is making these decisions and who's showing up in the world? Anika, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say I'm happy this is being recorded right now, because I'm definitely going to be rewatching this, you know, several times, you know, especially being someone who born and raised growing up and navigating Minnesota. But what comes to me when I think about like my experience, especially like just even as a Black woman navigating these spaces of just white superiority. I don't like saying white superiority, honestly, because I feel like that just gives it power, right? Because I think about the quote, I think it was either by James Baldwin or Maya Angelou, and our crowns are already paid and bought for. All we have to do is wear it. And that's my favorite quote, because it's so true. Our crowns are already paid and bought for. Like, someone already did the labor for us to be here. Someone already like invested. And that's another thing too. I'm so critical of the education system that we have had to inherit, and it's just atrocity. I feel like that's an extreme injustice. But I'm also very, very fortunate and blessed and privileged that my parents, my dad, who was historian, like a historian, like, you know, naturally, and some of the stories he told me of just like ancient Africa, and even my middle name being Makeda, off of, you know, East African Ethiopian woman queen who was so intelligent, right? And having these stories like Hatshepsut, having so many Black women in power, right? And like knowing that at a young age, right? So like my confidence level was through the roof because I saw myself not through the lineage of slavery, but through a lineage of royalty, and not a mystical royalty, not a mythology. Like these were real warrior queens. These was real caregivers, right? Village builders, nation builders. And I think about even on a contemporary level here, we have so many just beautiful dynamic women who, you know, we could say like forever my first lady, Michelle Obama, who had went through the fire of just like hatred with poise, right? Not everybody has it in them, but to see that we do have it in us, right? And so I feel like sometimes I have to get my Tyra Banks on. You know, it's an internal battle that I always have to go through, that I am enough. And I think, you know, last but not least, one of my mentors, my teacher, Jan Mandel, who actually wasn't a Black woman, but she was a Jewish woman. And she has shared with me something that I still hold to this day when I graduated. And she was saying, no matter what room you go in, never ever think of yourself as not knowing enough. Like never ever think of yourself of not being smart enough. That actually the fear of white supremacy and the fear of whiteness is that you know your worth. That is the fear. The fear is like, you know, your intelligence. That's the fear. Because when you act and boldly in that way, they cannot size up on that. And I think it's just, as Black people, we're so gracious and so merciful and so loving, that you know, sometimes we have had to dim our light to make other people feel comfortable. But I feel like 2020, it's just like, it's all out there. We illuminate it everywhere. So at this point, y'all gonna get all this light.
I love it. You're going to get all this light whether you want it or not. I love it. I absolutely love it. We have a question from the audience. Can you talk a little bit about how to handle the trauma caused by our own community from Black men? Would somebody like to pick that up? Okay, Dre, thank you.
That is a very hard question. You kind of have to meet yourself where you're at and figure out where your boundaries are, where you want to go with these relationships. I, for myself, am putting those kind of relationships on hold because right at the moment, right now, I got a lot of other things that come priority as far as my own safety and things like that, than trying to teach someone who has a similar shared experience with me. And so the hurt in the community, I think is when you talk about Black men, I think that we are always called to save them. We are always called to lift them up and be there for them. And we very rarely get it in return. And I believe that we know we're powerful. That's why they call us. So what kind of magicalness would it be if we return that to ourselves? When we get the call to help someone that looks like us, we show up as ourselves and give them that space and that grace. But as far as it comes to someone who is Black and masculine, I just sometimes don't always have the space right now. And that's just where I'm at. I think that maybe further in my life when I get through a lot more things and I'm better equipped to set my boundaries and communicate exactly what it is I need from them. And I think I will be in a different place and I will be able to accept that. But right now for me, it's just not a priority and a safe space for me to dive into that.
Thank you so much. Zede.
So, you know, that's a really heavy question. I think the first thing to say is, you know, as Black women, we need to allow ourselves the space to be angry and to prefer not to be in environments where there are other Black men. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we hate men. It doesn't mean we're on a strike to be against men. It doesn't mean that it is a community where we don't need men, specifically Black men. But for me, it means more so like, be okay with the fact that you don't prefer being around a brother right now because of a personal thing that's happened, or because of the way that they're talking to you, calling you female, saying female, or kind of degrading you, not really acknowledging your presence. If you don't want to be around that, like, allow yourself that. Like, that's what I think is a first step to like healing that trauma, is like allowing yourself to know that you don't have to be around that if you don't want to. If you feel like you want to just be around other sisters right now, then do that. And then I think another thing for like learning to heal that trauma is like understanding that like not all the time are Black men like bad persons. They're stupid sometimes, and they definitely don't understand us in a lot of ways as we are, you know, navigating this world, having the literal world on our shoulders. But it doesn't mean that they're bad people all the time. Now, that's not to say that, you know, there has not been harm in our communities from Black men. I'm just saying, in a sense, when we're learning how to unite, right? Because at the end of the day, we do need each other. We need each other to survive in these communities and to thrive. But to understand that, you know, we can somehow come together, but not have to be together. So I think that's like a big thing with learning to work through your trauma from, you know, people, men in our community, is like, be okay with not wanting to be around them. Be okay with not having a preference. And don't, you know, let that become a statement in your life where you're just like anti Black men, right? Because I support, I support especially my trans sisters. I support them not wanting to be around men. Like, that is a valid thing when you look back in their history, when you look back in the things that have happened to them. That's valid. In the same breath, I want to acknowledge that at the end of the day, we need each other to fight this huge battle against white supremacy. So I think that's what I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you, Zede. You know, it's very complex, this situation of relationships between Black men and Black women. It's historic. You know, they took us from one another and pitted us against one another, and then expect that 400 years later we figured out how to do the relationship, even though the oppressor still keeps up with the nonsense. And so we suffer from that, you know, and we do need every soldier in the village. We do need all of us. And so it is difficult to figure out how they help themselves get better while we help ourselves get better, so that when we meet, it's not a total disaster.
Yeah, I agree. I had a Black woman get upset with me because I said that, you know, my focus is on Black women's healing, and Black men need to heal themselves. And she felt like it was like anti-community to say that. And, you know, Black women have been taking care of everybody for centuries. And it's time that we center ourselves. And the amount of trauma that Black men, a lot of Black men, impose on us is unnatural. It's unhealthy. And like everyone else was saying, like, if you need to separate yourselves, you need to separate. But I think we need to have the support too of other Black women in understanding our trauma. And we need to hold Black men accountable for their behaviors, and other Black women need to do so also. Because a lot of times, a lot of Black women are also capping for Black men who cause harm. You know, for instance, R. Kelly, there's still so many women who still support him, you know, and we'll be out here. I think they did a rally or something. It's like, as Black women, we have to support each other when we do say we can't be around them. And it's not that it's going to be a forever thing, but it's definitely an in the moment thing until they're able to get it together amongst themselves, which is why we're having a second conversation where Black men can speak to each other about how they need to protect us, because it's not on us to figure that out.
Excellent feedback, Abriana. You know, that's excellent feedback. Anybody else? Anika, thank you.
Here we go. I just love what I'm hearing. I think for me, my advice is really, I feel like more Black men, I don't understand. Like Brianna was sharing, I kind of been experiencing more of the reverse of like Black men shunning Black women spaces. And I don't understand because it's like if Black women was to actually have healthy sisterhood and have a healthy support system of Black women and like actually have good relationships, you know, that is going to help and build and strengthen the Black woman. And for Black men who either in relationship or family or like being raised by a Black woman or in business or whoever, you know, working with Black women, like that benefits everyone, including Black men. So I feel like there's definitely I think there's a lot of fear, you know, and it just even calling it out, I think also too, like, you know, ignorance of feminism, and I also like not having a correct framework of like feminism, of understanding feminism, and how like that has been utilized and weaponized, especially in the Black community. And it's this fear of you know, if a Black woman is centering herself in her womanness, then now she is like is totally neglecting, you know, Black men, and that is not true, you know, like, and I think we need to have more compassion and love, because think about our mothers, right? Like if our mothers are not good, then they're not going to be able to raise anyone, you know, in a healthy way. And like, we should allow our mothers to take their cape off. We should allow our mothers to be in sisterhood, to be, you know, and to grow amongst other women, you know, other femmes and other people in a community that supports them. So I just think it's a tactic that is like out of fear, out of trauma, like you have shared. And just even, you know, there's a whole laundry list of a bunch of trauma that has happened, you know, by the hands of Black men. And, you know, I charge that all to the game, to like slavery and like just the total stripping of their humanity and also of their egos, to where like they weren't able to protect us. They weren't able to defend. And even when they were killed, right? So that's another extra layer of fear. And I mean, we could connect it to a lot of things, but I think about whiteness too, of just like how in our media, to where it's like Black men are often positioned to be that savior for white women, but we yet rarely see saviors for Black women. Like there's no princess or no royal or no like story out there. I would love to see a story out there where Black women are saved and protected, and not having to be the warrior or the front lines of the army, you know, to where like, where do we see our brothers protecting us? Because that has happened, that is happening, but yet we have not been in spaces to fully preserve that.
Thank you. You know, I think about Malcolm, and I think you included him, Abriana, in one of our early communications. The most unprotected, disrespected person in the United States of America is the Black woman. And Malcolm recognized it and really tried to lift Black women, but in a culture that was very oppressive in his religious ideas. So, you know, it's a two things can be true at the same time. We can be liberated and in prison at the same time. And for some reason, the oppression of women, Professor Mahmoud teaches, when the conqueror comes to a country, they take two things first: the banks and the women. The most powerful part of the village is the women. And I want to work with a Black woman researcher sometime in my lifetime to figure out what happens between the time I gave birth to him and the time when he came out talking disrespectfully to me about Black women, and the time when he came out and can't even be in relationship with a Black woman, even though I'm a very strong, what I consider to be positive, good mother, Black woman, but my son can't show up with Black women. What is that about? I would like to know, but that's just me. So it is now 8:12, and we are coming to a time when we are going to be talking about solutions. And one of the things we talked about in our call was to really center on envisioning what protection looks like in the future and how we see ourselves in the future. What is a tangible step someone might take who endeavors to keep Black women safe in perhaps ways they have not been able to before? And if someone would like to take it first, that's just fine. I'm just looking at the chat too. Dre, is that you, or are you just doing your beautiful background? Okay, I'll be quiet. You're up, Dre.
I have found a lot of security in practicing how to shoot a gun. I have not purchased one yet, but it will be very soon. I think that it's time to take heed. I'm walking into these gun ranges and they are empty. Somebody is buying these guns, and I'm just gonna say I don't think it's us. So I think it's definitely time to arm yourself. And if you are not comfortable with the gun, there are other options as far as weaponry goes. And I think that you should take the means to protect yourself and not only just own it, but learn how to use it. It's one thing to have that protection, but if you don't know how to operate it, then it's pretty much useless and can be very dangerous. Another thing is it's not just a physical warfare, it's very spiritual. And so if you are not in communications with your spirit guides, if you're not in communication with whoever you pray to, whatever you pray to, it's time to really, really lock in that relationship and have that and start communicating with them. Also, I think I tie everything to health. Take care of your bodies, whether that be eating clean, whether it be being active and things like that. Our bodies are going to be our first defense of protection. And if we are not healthy from the inside out, then it's another kind of a challenge that we have to overcome when trying to protect ourselves. Lastly, I think is get your gang together. Everyone should have a very strong sisterhood where you can call someone, y'all have a plan when you need safety that should be already talked about. Like, get that sisterhood together. It doesn't have to be a huge community. I literally have about 3 people that I know I can call whenever I need to call them, and they will show up for me, and the same is for them. That sisterhood is extremely important in creating your own concepts of safety, because we already know that we're not centered in the safety that we have now. And so in order to recreate what that looks like, we have to start with us. And I think that's pretty much all I have to say about that part.
That's a powerful piece. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dre. Zede?
So for me, or not for me, but what I've been learning as I've been on this farm is self-sustainability is a huge piece of protection. We successfully grew our own crops, both CBD, hemp, and produce. And we were able to can and we were able to preserve food for ourselves, not at 100%. We're getting there, but just that small bit of having our own food that we grew, that we nourish, that we know is non-GMO, our own livestock. Sorry, I got a little fussy baby. But the biggest thing is like self-sustainability and finding a group of women, Black women that have like-minded, like, oh, you want to own property, you want to build a home, you want your babies to be raised with other Black women, and have that tribe, create a plan. I know that there's some Facebook groups right now of like, it's called like Black Women Grow, things like that. Like, get yourself connected with other women to learn how to be self-sustainable. I mean, like, with the way that this world is going, I think the USDA estimates there's going to be a massive seed shortage. And what that means is that there may be a food shortage for people here in this country. So what does it look like to grow your own food for your community? Be the neighborhood gardener for everybody. And then I know Eni asked the question, what are the alternative methods of protection besides guns? I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna piggyback off what Dre said and say, like, being armed is crucial. And learning how to work through that fear and trauma of guns is something that we also need to include, because our fear of guns is valid and it's absolutely, there's a reason why we fear guns. Like, that's a real thing in our communities. And so there are so many people that don't even prefer to want to be around a gun, but I want to challenge that and say to get uncomfortable and work through that discomfort and learn how to at least know to pick it up when you need to. You don't have to have it with you on your hip, right? But you can definitely learn how to, like, if you need to in a quick moment, pick it up, work through that. It took me 2 years before I actually touched a gun to, you know, physically learn how it works. So I get it. Like, that trauma is real, that fear is real. And if you really truly don't feel comfortable, then having a knife, having a backup plan, like you have a brother you can call that can kind of be a security. Like, what's your security system? Do you have cameras around your home? You don't? Okay, how can we get you the resources to have that? Like, always having eyes behind your back, always having a backup plan if you really don't prefer to have guns. That's what I would say is a good solution. So that's all I gotta say with my crying baby.
Crying babies are a sign of life. That's wonderful. Thank you. Anika, did you show your hand or did I? Okay. Anybody else? Oh, Atlese, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I really echo a lot of what was already said in terms of like arming yourself, but I also would say, like, as an alternative to guns as well, is like actually knowing how to fight. Like, self-defense is also about like how, because it's ways to take people down who are significantly bigger than you. And so I think it's important to also, like, if you want to take kickboxing, I had experienced a violent situation a few years ago, and I started taking kickboxing just to work through the trauma of it. And that was something that empowered me, and I feel safer in my body more than I used to anyway, in certain situations. I think the other thing is, I wanted to touch a little bit on the question too, still about, you know, with Black men. I feel really safe with Black men who are my family or my friends. But when it comes to the romantic relationships, that's where the boundaries get fuzzy. And so it's like when it comes down to solutions for me, it's like, one, know how to physically defend myself, but two, like really trusting my intuition when a man is showing me who he is. Because a lot of Black men can be Black like this, but they're not Black here and they not Black here. Because some Black people really want that respectability. Like, that's where they're leaning toward. And that's where that violence comes in. Because if you see yourself as sacred, then you got to see me as sacred, and you wouldn't treat me that way. And so I think a lot of it has to do with how we unlearn, and how we, like Dre said earlier, unlearn and relearn, and really being able to tap into our greater strength within ourselves, and not seeing ourselves through the lens of whiteness. Because if a Black person is trying to just attain what whiteness is, which is all type of depravity, then of course there's going to be depraved actions that are inflicted upon their own people and themselves. And so I think it just really separating ourselves from that as much as possible. And that's a lifelong journey. But it's extremely crucial, because we shouldn't see ourselves through the lens of white supremacy. We should see ourselves through what we are, what we were created to be. But the other thing I love that Zede talked about, sustainability in terms of farming and things like that as well, because I think about the fact that my grandmother had such an agricultural upbringing, like living in Mississippi, and like I kind of know how to grow some stuff, and I did a little bit of it during quarantine, but like it's not to the same extent. And I think that really tapping into that knowledge, because like my granddaddy, like, I don't want to tell the whole story because I'll be talking too long, but like my granddaddy could live off of the land, literally. Like anywhere he was at, he was going to live, survive, and be well. And I think that that's something that's extremely important, to reconnect to what the earth has already given us, in terms of how we can be sustainable, because that scarcity mindset comes from whiteness. Like, we actually live in critical abundance all the time. But you know, white supremacy teaches you that's not enough. That's why I gotta colonize and colonize and colonize. And so really separating ourselves from the way that we have been conditioned to be and being who we need to be is far more important than, like, to me, that is the solution as much as it can be. And I think that that's just something that, like I said, it's a lifelong thing, but that's the solution for me, is understanding, like, how do I separate myself from all of that? And also, how do I stick to my boundaries? And how do I know how to physically defend myself in a situation that if I happen to get in one?
You're a hit, at least. Everybody's chatting about you. Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else?
I'll share something just like that came to mind. Recently, I've been, since the quarantine and since like the pandemic, I've been like really focused on like building community wealth. And so just like learning so much. And one of the things that, aside from physical safety, I think economic safety is really important. We know that in communities that have been impoverished or, extreme, don't have their basic rights or basic needs taken care of, that is a total space of like unsafety, right? So I think like really planning and like having conversations with our families around like generational wealth, right? And Dr. Boyce Watkins had this quote talking about, or this stat that 70% of Black families lose their wealth to the next generation. And 90% of Black families lose their wealth in the second generation, to where like we don't have conversations around what does it look like for our parents to pass down something, right? Or and usually, even statistics have showed that millennials actually are taking on their parents' debt, when their parents are passing away. So like we are put into a situation to where we have to not only defend ourselves, but like make sure that we are economically sustainable and being entrepreneurs, right? Having multiple streams of income, learning new ways to preserve and save. I think we're starting to be way more preserving of our dollars now and more conscious of how we spend our dollars. I think that's just so incredible because like we have seen, the ugly head of white supremacy, and we know that capitalism is the heartbeat, is the driving factor, behind it. And being more conscious of how we spend our money, for me personally, is one things that make me have more security around. If I know things are tight, that I have a collective of Black businesses I can barter with, right? I got Black entrepreneurs we can build and create something with, right? To where like everything's not money. Yeah, we got to pay bills, but I still have spaces to where I could collaborate with, with Black entrepreneurs, creatives, business owners, real estate owners, investors, right? So creating that like Black collective economics, to me, is a place of a tactic of safety and security.
As always, you expand my thinking. Thank you, Anika. That is absolutely central to our safety and security. Thank you. Dre?
I wanted to add on too, because I think that's a good thing to talk about, is how we create our own economy. And one thing I've noticed is that the things that are essential, the things that we need to sustain, are not available or not made by us. Soap, toothpaste, deodorant. I can get bundles, I can get lashes, I can get outfits, but I can't get things that I need. Toilet paper, like those things are the things that we need to be starting businesses in, because we can start a business. We know that now, but I think it's kind of time to start being more intentional about what those businesses are, so they can actually support not just ourselves, but our communities as well.
Says a Black entrepreneur. I can dig it. I can dig it. Well, I'll tell you, this has been like soul food for me. I didn't mean to ask you for anything, and I hope I didn't ask you, but whatever I didn't ask you for, you gave me anyway. And I hope that that's true for everybody on this call. I want to say thank you, Abriana, for having a vision to have this call. Would you like to say a word or two before we close?
Yeah, just quickly. And I totally agree with us having to create these multiple streams of incomes and things like that. But we do have to divest from capitalism, period, and lean more into self-sufficiency and sustainability, like Zede was talking about with farming and things like that. So spiritually, I just feel like we're coming up on a time where a lot of this stuff isn't going to matter anymore. And I really would hope that us as Black folks can just really lean into community and what autonomy looks like for Black people. And then as far as for like how Black women are seeing ourselves in the future, I just wanted to read this quote from the Combahee River Collective, and it says, "If Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all the systems of oppression." And that is how I see the broader community coming together with us to, and what protection and freedom will look like in the future.
This is fantastic. I will use the words of Whitney Blount Smith, who said, "This is ceremony. This is sacred space. And I cherish all of your voices, spirits, and beings. Gratitude abundant." I think that I couldn't say it more perfectly. And if you are interested, the Twin Cities Book Festival has Pamela Sneed coming up. I don't know if you know her. I'm just getting hip to her now. The back of her book says, in personal essays and poetry, Pamela Sneed details her coming of age in New York City during the late 1980s, capturing the impact of AIDS on Black queer life and highlighting the enduring bonds between the living, the dying, and the dead. Offering critical focus on matters from police brutality to LGBTQ plus rights, Funeral Diva confronts today's most pressing issues and closes with the poet's reflections on the two pandemics of her time, AIDS and COVID-19, and the disproportionate impact of each on African American communities. If we don't write our stories, somebody else will write it for us. So we have to write it for ourselves to tell our truth. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. I give you in the world, Atlese, Abriana, Anika, Dre, and Zede. There is hope abounding, and our ancestors are well pleased. Keep fighting, beauties, and I'm with you, each of you, all the time. Thank you. Good night.